So we're joined all the way from Houston, Texas, by our first guest of our school year here for our computer science engineering class at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. We've got my friend, computer software engineer Cornelia Howard, working on so many cool projects over the years. I will put your resume up against most people's when it comes to all the great work you do in not only space exploration, but you've worked in tons of other really cool projects that, I don't think people realize need a lot of technical people in the background. So, again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here.
All right. Now, obviously, we want to talk about the work you do now in the human health performance aspect of space exploration. The company you're with does a contract with NASA. But first, take us back to the beginning, because even though you are a military brat, you finished up in Huntsville, Alabama, where
Yes.
you went to, and we'll let you make it. This is Jackson State territory. You went to Alabama A&M there in Huntsville. So, talk
Come
about your
Bulldog.
HBCU experience. And then you immediately went to University of West Alabama to get a master's. You had the HBCU PWI combo. I love having this conversation. So our kids that are, considering both schools, talk about what both of them offer. Because even if they have no desire to ever be in an engineering or tech field, we have so many great HBCUs in this part of the country and a lot of great PWIs, and they can get a great experience from each. And since you've attended both, just compare those two experiences and how it kind of molded you to your current career.
Absolutely. So, as he stated, I attended Alabama A&M University in Huntsville. Go Bulldogs. I enjoyed my time there. I felt that being at a HBCU, it built my confidence. It strengthened my confidence and identity. It also introduced me to what Black excellence really looks like. And I think that was the part that I was a little concerned about, to see someone like myself, not only in my field of work, but also taking on the major that I was, doing. And so I can literally say, like, I know over 30 plus engineers working in multiple companies, Amazon, working for the military, also working with NASA Kennedy Space Center, the list can go on, including some researchers. But I didn't have to question whether I belong due to my race. And I could just solely focus on discovering what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be and who I currently am. I think what else was great is that my professors and classmates also understood the cultural experience. We did have a few teachers that we actually had a lot of teachers that were from other countries like Pakistan. You had a few from China. So it also gave that sense of diversity to understand their teaching methods, but also to see how they push you, because they also knew, like, okay, we're preparing you to go into the work field. And we know we may not look alike, but these are the things that you have to learn in order to, succeed and persevere. And then I think the last thing as well was having a strong community. So I'm in engineering fraternity. Across the A&M 2014 is Eddie Capital Engineering Technology Fraternity Incorporated. It's a lot of us. It was like 42 on my line at that time, and that was in 2014. Yeah. And so just my line alone, like whenever when layoffs were happening, recently we just jumped in a group message and was like, hey, do you know a company that can, help me? Do you know a company that's hiring? So to keep that network going, that was like one of the best things ever. Like I can go to them and speak about certain experiences. They can come to us and speak about, those experiences. So I enjoyed my time. Definitely was a fashionista as well. I also did dance team at A&M. So I was very active. I was in the Veterans Club. I did a lot of stuff. NASB, I was in NASB, still in NASB, IEEE,
We'll get
SWE.
to Nesby in a second, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that
Gotcha.
up.
But yeah, I participated in all. So be very active at school, definitely, but focus on your grade stuff for sure. I would say the benefits in my experience at a PWI, it was a little bit different. I will be transparent and say that, but it exposed me to more people and more cultures and life experiences. So at that time, I was working on my master's. So it wasn't just like undergrad students that were early, 20s. I'm now having classmates that are mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, uncles, teachers, all, we already in our occupation as well. So it was a different background. And on top of that, I was getting my master's in business. Granted, it was computer focused, but it was business. And so I'm like, okay, I got to learn about accounting, economics again. And I'm not going to lie and say those were my strong suits because they weren't. But just, to have the experience, it was great. I did learn how to communicate and how to collaborate with people because that to me goes a long way, especially at work. When you get into this work field, you're gonna work with so many people. Like even now, I'm on a brand new team where it wasn't like, oh, come in here, let's go ahead and start onboarding. No, like you have to go in there, adapt and say, hey, my name is Cornelia. It's nice to meet everyone. Where can I help? Let me know the ropes. What documents can I read? And in order for me to, take that on, I learned that through my master's. And I would say the third thing was also learning how to advocate for myself, especially in spaces where it may have been underestimated and overlooked. And what I mean by that was I was the only engineer at that time. And so, and I actually going through this now, but to have others that are already in that field, like whether they're in business or like right now working on my PhD, a majority of them are teachers. And so it was like for myself, I have to say, hey, I have knowledge in these things, I have some experience, however, my occupation is just a little bit different, but I can take it on and I can do it. And I think that was the best thing too, that I had to take accountability is learning how to listen to understand and not just respond because it is a major difference. But I would say overall, um, really neither experience was better. It was just more how they developed my path to get here.
There
I
you
would
go.
say that my
Love it.
HBCU, helped me understand my value. The PWI taught me how to carry that value into rooms that may have not been prepared for me.
That's
And
awesome.
so that goes a long way. But together, they both prepared me to work in engineering and work in fields, that were greatly unexpected. So, yeah,
That's
it was
awesome. But I'm glad you mentioned two things. One is about the importance of communication because
yeah.
when we get done here in a little while, they're going to finish working on their presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And even though this is a computer science engineering, that communication piece is so important. And we'll get to that more
Definitely.
in a second about why it's part of your everyday career as somebody that works in an engineering space. And then I'm glad you mentioned Nesby because I always tell people no matter what your major is, no matter
Mm-hmm.
where you go to school, and even if you're at a community college, find things to get involved in. You were able to have
Yes.
some big time internships while you
Yes.
were at Alabama A&M working with some big time companies, getting hands-on experience. People in the tech and engineering space want people that have had that hands-on experience. They
Mm-hmm.
want the good grades, but they want to know, hey, if I hire this person, can they do the job? So, and
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't want to miss one, but you worked with some incredible companies that are making some awesome high-tech aviation type stuff that we don't really think about needs people in the background on the engineering side. So
Mm-hmm.
NSB is a great organization. We have chapters here in Mississippi, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Jackson State,
Mm-hmm.
all have chapters. So PWI or HBCU, great thing to get involved in. And if you're not in engineering, find something similar. Find a
Yes.
way to get your name out there and build your network.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
now, obviously, we want to talk about what you do now because the
Mhm.
company you're with does have a contract with NASA out at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, which is so cool. But anybody that pays attention to anything space, we just had the Artemis launch, which was so cool. I never thought in my life I'd get to see a moon launch.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's so many things that have to be perfect for that
Mhm.
rocket to take off. And
Oh,
what you're involved in is something I never thought about. So you work in the health human and health performance aspect of it. You
yes.
deal with communication, the
Mhm.
technology, the computer software, the wiring of the suits and everything to make sure the people on the ground can communicate with the guys and girls that are up in outer space. So
Mhm.
obviously this is a 1,000 step process that you
Yes.
guys have to shoot every day. So
Yeah.
talk about some of the skills that maybe people that are interested in this area may not understand. And also, we just got through talking about colleges. Maybe if we
Mhm.
had kids that say, this tech and engineering stuff is cool, but I'm not really a college person. there's a space for you in this field through a multitude of different ways. So I know you work with people with a variety of
Mhm.
educational backgrounds, but all the skills are the same. So just tell us
Right.
a little bit about what the project is that you guys do and
Mhm.
some of the skills that you use every day to solve this engineering problem.
Okay. So the project I work on, we call it the Crew Health Performance Integrated Data Platform. And it sounds long, but to summarize it, it is it started as research and it's currently still in research, but we're progressing through the life cycle. And when I say life cycle, you have different steps that you have to follow in order to say, hey, this is ready to go ahead and fly. And so there was a first it was recognized that there was a need for autonomy. And so the project I'm on says, you know what, the astronauts will be farther away from Earth, and the communication with Earth may be delayed or completely unavailable at times. So even like this Artemis 2 launch, because actually that was my first job supporting Artemis 2. um
Wow, congratulations. That's incredible.
you. They did lose a bit of communication, and it was like, okay, thinking about the medical side, which I'm on, is like, okay, are these astronauts, well prepared that if they're unable to communicate with the ground, that they'll be able to help, themselves. And because of that, astronauts they're not always, you know, they always can't wait for help from Earth. So Earth ground, we just call it ground. And they need to be able to use the information and the systems available on board, to make those decisions, to complete the task and handle, problems on their own. And so for that to occur, they thought about autonomy. Well, also, this is when AI was still building, and of course, AI is still in research now. So you have to be mindful of those things. You have to be mindful of HIPAA law, because when we test, certain features, we're using data, and this is real, people's data. Well, we call it mock data as well, but we just don't disclose the name, just for HIPAA purposes. And so then also we realize, well, we need data integration as well. And so because we plan to have a Earth independent crew that can do their job without needing immediate help from ground, that is where we realize, like, okay, we need to make sure that they can keep performing effectively, handle the unexpected problems, but also learning how to stay, prepared. So for example, like some of the testing and stuff that we do, we use what we call a scenario. And one of our recent scenarios was saying, if John is up in ISS in flight in space, and they're, realizing that they're having a headache, well, Lord forbid that communication factor is, messed up. And so it's like, okay, John sends a message down to what we call like our chief medical officer, but the chief medical officer is not available. Is John able to receive that help to make sure his headache goes away? Or does he still
Wow.
need the chief medical officer's, support? But even if the chief medical officer is down there, to make sure that whatever she says, say, hey, take a Tylenol and go to bed, to make sure that's communicated properly, back to flight in a decent amount of time. So that's pretty much what I do right now. I also have dabbled in a few other projects that, deal with all other bodily functions, because we have to test everything. When I say everything, I mean everything. So, supporting those projects as well, because we have to make sure that they're in good health and good safety.
Yeah,
Um,
because the reason for that, we all see the rockets, we all see the computers and everything, but a
right.
person's body, when they, and again, this is for our space science teachers, so Coach Shook, this will be for you. When a person's body goes to space, you are in
Mhm.
a different atmosphere. Your body has to be able to adjust. If you're in space
Right.
for a long time, you come back to Earth. Your body has to be able to adjust. There's a lot of things that have to happen for you to be useful as an astronaut in all those
Mhm.
steps.
Absolutely. And like you, in the other part that you want me to hit on, so even in the world of aerospace, it's like another world in the sense of like we have nurses, we have those who work in HVAC, because we have so many labs. So
Oh yeah.
whether whichever facility, if you're in Louisiana, Kennedy Space Center, in Huntsville, and Houston, you have to have HVAC. We have hardware, which some people like to, be more hands on, whether they're doing electrical or they're actually just, for example, working on a urinal. The urinal, all you doing is placing the devices as such and make sure that the astronauts are comfortable while using it. So it's a place for you. It's just finding that path that may be best to get to that place. And if all it takes is a certification, and sometimes that may be an investment as well, I will be transparent because sometimes things do cost, but there is a place for you, within this field.
Yeah, you're always going to need tradespeople in space exploration. I don't understand why people don't know that.
Yeah.
Because you're going, like you said, especially now with HVAC, with all the servers that have to be kept cool, they
Mm-hmm.
cannot overheat. There are
Nope.
people that know absolutely nothing about space travel that are managing you guys' servers. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
them only have certifications, and they're making a lot of money. There are
Absolutely.
people writing code that probably may have learned in the military. So there are
Mm-hmm.
multiple ways to get into these spaces that don't necessarily require the 4 year degree. Now, if you want to get the 4 year degree, by all means, we want everybody to do that has an opportunity. But
Oh,
there's
absolutely.
never been a better time to get into this space where you don't necessarily need that traditional 4 year degree.
Right. Yeah.
Now, before I get to their questions, obviously you talked about some of your experience, especially, at the PWI, where you found yourself in spaces where there weren't people like you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very, it's something that every field is working on. And it's not, people can say we're just passing people through, but that's not the reason. We
Yeah.
need so many diverse thoughts. We need diverse backgrounds,
Yeah.
and look, nobody in your family may have ever been close to something like this. We have a lot of first generation Americans in our district. We have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of children of immigrants. Obviously, we're an all black community, but there's a space for all of them to maybe find a place in this field. And
Oh,
these jobs
absolutely.
are not going away. It doesn't
No.
necessarily have to be in space exploration, but these
Mm-hmm.
jobs in tech and IT, AI, coding, engineering, whether they're degree or trade, are not going anywhere. So,
Yeah.
as somebody that's on ground zero on the field, why is there such a need to diversify this space?
So I would say first I will start off with the movie Hidden Figures, and I'm bringing it up because crazy enough, I actually went to go watch the movie, and probably about I would say about 2 months later, after the movie released, I realized that space was still on my mind. And it never my dream job was to work for Google. I'm be honest, it was to work for Google, become a video game, developer. And so yeah, and so I was like, okay. I said, well, let me look up, to see what NASA entails and just have an idea. Cause by this time I think I was either a junior, maybe. I was a junior and I also already had an internship with the military. I was about to start the internship. And so I was considering about changing the internship, trying to find a way to NASA the whole night yard. And then as time went on, I also remember my parents threw me a birthday party at NASA when I was 8. And it hit me, that hit me too. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is just a coincidence. Well, come to find out, even this year, I find out my grandfather who received his PhD, Neil Armstrong, spoke at his graduation,
Wow.
right? And so I'm like, okay, this is too many coincidences. And anyway, so fast forward, I realized, when I started off with the military, it was a little bit more diverse, but it still wasn't like that HBCU environment. And that's when I knew I was like, okay, I kind of get an idea what this workforce, will be like. The thought processes are also different. I will say that as someone who is the oldest, everything, oldest granddaughter, oldest child, sometimes there can be that, what's the word I want to use? I'm not gonna say bias. It can be the expectation of Black women specifically being mm, always solving problems. I word it like that. And you hear these things, but seeing it firsthand, it was like, okay, like there's a lot of expectation and a lot of dependency. But then I'm thinking, well, she is older than me. So, okay, whatever. So time went on and I started my first role here in Houston. And I realized like some of the things we were working on, I said, well, a lot of this came from Katherine Johnson. Like a lot of the
He does
yeah,
not get enough credit. I'm telling you.
I'm like, this is, Katherine Johnson work, but I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna say anything. And so actually one of the second teams I supported, I had one of the hardest times. I'm being honest. I had one of the hardest times because how I think, also coming from an HBCU as well, we're taught to be solution based. So that's where that hand in hand of, being dependent on a Black woman, but also, being willing to address the problem, but also trying to find a solution. And I found myself in it when I had a coworker who was very complicated. This is around COVID. He gave me a hard time because I was, technically new for them. Most of my team was also in Colorado. So I really had to communicate consistently because I wasn't physically there. And so, unfortunately, we had what we call like a CDR, which is a critical design review. He actually passed away 2 weeks before the CDR. And those who know in this workforce, we can't stop a CDR because one person may have left this place. And so all the meetings and all the documentation, I was in control of that. I kept up with all that, kept organized in Confluence and Jira and the whole 9 yards. The day he passed away, they rehired someone by 12 o'clock. And
Wow.
I had to brief the new hire, the new guy, and say, this is what we've been working on. This is what will be presented for CDR
Wow.
X, Y, and Z. And I found myself once again in that solution based, role because you got to be quick on your feet. But that's what we're taught at HBC. We can address the problem all day, but stuff still has to, go on. And so, even fast forward again, I supported Starliner. I supported Starliner. That was the one where the two astronauts got stuck in space. And I was software quality at the time. And being software quality, you witness testing. Like you have to sit there and see the test and stamp to say, hey, this test, I concur, it works well. You can move it on. Or you say, hey, this test is not, doing what it's supposed to do. We need to sit down and reconsider or, troubleshoot, whatever case may be. And I had a few incidents where, some men would come up to me and be like, hey, can you stamp and sign this? And I'm like, no, like I wasn't there to witness the test. I don't know if it worked. So that won't be happening. But what we can do, and I caught myself, then I'm like, you already bringing solutions to, a problem that they brought to you, but they also occurred. Cause I'm like, the work still has to get done. Even currently now, I do a lot of foundational, type work because that's the military as well. I like to think ahead and have a good foundation and be, in a timely manner. So I would say, far as that diversity, just, even within ourselves, we're taught to be, solution based. We're taught to be problem solvers. And it's not even just in the HBCU environment, but it can start at an early age, if I'm gonna be honest. But
Okay.
even my other colleagues who are from other, backgrounds, different diversities, they implement, some of their upbringing as well, into some of our work fields. So I would say having that diverse background, it helps so much because they may be working for JP, well, Japanese agency, or they could be working for ESA, the European Space Agency. They may do things differently than,
Yeah.
and it may work better, So it's like you have to be understand, like I said, listen to really understand and learn how to work, with people. You may not always agree, but it's good to be adaptable and it's good to work with others. So
Yeah, and just a quick aside there, you mentioned Katherine Johnson. Right? For those who don't know, the movie Hidden Figures tells her story. Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong said they could not have landed on the moon without her physics and engineering work
yeah.
on the lunar module and on the first moon landing back on an Apollo's 8, I believe it was. So that was a black woman that helped put us on the moon and win the space race. So she never gets enough credit for that. But that's just a perfect example of how anybody can find their place there. Well, I do have some questions here. I'm gonna get to as many of these as I can because these are
Okay.
really good. Unfortunately, they did not put their names on them, but they're still really good questions.
Okay.
I love this person. This is Jayon Kincaid. He's in 11th grade,
Mhm.
11th or 10th, 11th. He's in 11th grade, and he asked, "Do any 2 days ever look the same as an engineer?"
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, it can, depending on what you're doing. So currently I'm a systems engineer, software hardware systems engineer. And I work on more documentation. So most of my days are, reading, reviewing, updating, making sure that software is also meeting where we are with systems. So it can, but I will also share experience where it did not. When I, supported the military, it was about 2 years ago. Um, it looked different every day. Like, most of our coding was SQL, but I will never forget, and Java is not my strongest language. So I was behooved the day they were like, oh, we're updating this website and we're updating it was something specific. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I remember the computer analyst lead was like, oh, you just have to use Java to figure it out. And I was like, Java? I'm like, I haven't done Java since college because I didn't have to use it at NASA. And NASA it was
Well,
Linux.
they all learn Java in middle schools. They don't have an excuse.
Oh, perfect. See, and that's one of the biggest things about being computer science, but also being well diverse in your skill set of knowing how to use which coding. Of course, you may have one that's stronger than the other, but those days working with military never looked the same. It was always something new, something different. And that's okay too. Like sometimes you just have to be adaptable in that environment as well. So honestly, it just varies on the job role that you have. Hardware, it may not look the same every day either, because you may be working, like you said, on HVAC 1 minute, but then you may have to help the electrical engineers to make sure their stuff is still powered up and running. Lord forbid a storm or a hurricane happen here. So yeah, it just varies on your role.
I, I like this one. They didn't put their name on it, but this is a good question. Was there a particular course in college that drove you to want to pursue this type of engineering?
Mm, honestly, I would say my senior project. And that's well, I would say my senior project and physics 1 and 2. Physics was interesting to me because that was my first time ever taking it, but I didn't realize one how much fun it could be, especially when you get to see how it's implemented in the real world, which within aerospace or just space exploration by itself, like physics play a huge part in a lot of what we do. Now, granted, I don't work with physics every day, and I don't that's more for the scientists and researchers. But I realized now being in this field, like that was definitely a great class. And then I would say my senior project, we created the mobile app for Alabama A&M at that time. So
Oh, cool.
students, yeah, so they can go on there and register for classes, check the bus and all that.
Oh, wow.
But I say that it helped me realize like this is being an engineer developer is something that I did want to do, and seeing that product being utilized, it was like, oh, you really contribute to that, like you really did that. And the
Man, it
same
really
thing,
is cool. All the
yeah,
tangible things you get to see in this field. So, man, and that just to show you, there's a lot of tech people behind everything you see. All right, I got time for two more, and that was a
okay.
great segue to this question. And they didn't write their name on this one either, but I like this one. It said, if you weren't in this area of engineering, which one would you be in?
Ooh, I would say construction management because I always wanted to be a project manager as well. Construction management is actually interesting to me. I have a lot of friends that are in that field. They travel a lot. They experience some awesome things. I have a friend who worked on Hard Rock down there in Fort Lauderdale. Had a friend that worked in the Martin Luther King House in Atlanta. So it's great opportunities in construction management, civil engineering, I should say, as well. So yeah,
More
I
and more
probably
women getting into that too. I mean, you got
yes,
some, especially out on the West Coast, you got some big time construction companies owned by women
definitely.
that wanted to go that route. All right, I got one more, and again, they didn't write their name on it, but this is a good question. It asks, when you're working as an engineer, what do you think is the most important skill you use?
Mm, besides communication, I would say optimism. I'm a very optimistic person. Working in this field, you can't implement negativity because it can hinder the work environment. A lot of this starts with the work environment when it's a very tedious and confusing and just all over the place. That can definitely hinder someone's work. So I'm that person that's very optimistic to say, hey, you know it always works out even when you don't think it will, and your in this path may look different from all the other projects, but at the end of the day, It's gonna work out. Everybody calm down. Let's think this through. Let's communicate and let's try to solve it. But yeah, optimism is honestly one of the biggest skill sets outside of like a physical skill set.
Yeah, because engineers never get it right the first time. So you got to be
Definitely.
optimistic that you're going to trust the process, work as a team, and come up with a solution. Which is what,
Absolutely.
you know, what you're part of this class. I mean, we don't have the same amount of time as you do, but I'm always
Mm.
like, look, you're on the right track. You work together, keep working the
Oh yeah.
process. You know, you gotta believe you can do it. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. But a couple things before we go. I think everybody ought to look up some of the things that your group does when it comes to human health performance on space travel. I looked up a couple things, and it was things I didn't even know. So, you know, I think go to YouTube, go to Google, just look up NASA human health performance, and it is astounding this kind of stuff you guys are working on that is still being developed. So, you know, as these
Absolutely.
kids are, and that leads me to what I wanted to end with, you know, as these kids are making decisions for what they want to do after high school, whether they want to do the community college, the military, 4-year college,
Hmm.
whatever, these technologies are going to continue to change. It's going to need them to learn it. So
Yeah.
why should they really not count themselves out when it comes to the cutting edge of things that affect all of us?
Oh, absolutely. Never doubt yourself. Like I say, it always works out. You just really have to walk in it and believe it. And it's gonna be scared, but you do it scared. It always works out. That's the best advice I can give.
Love it. Well, we thank you for fitting us in your schedule. Next time in Houston, we'll do something. I appreciate it
Of
so
course.
much joining us all the way from Houston, Texas. My friend Cornelia Howard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, talk to you soon.
All right.